School. It's where I've put most of my time and effort over the last 4 months. Again.
And it's been even more f***ing draining. But hey, it's over now, and I've once again made some pretty cool stuff that I thought it'd be a shame if it never saw the light of day. So here's a showcase of stuff I made throughout my second semester of college across both my Graphic Design 1 and Digital Art 1 classes.
The first project I want to spotlight is the Color Wheels project. Well, in this case, it's one color wheel with multiple layers, but you get the point. This piece is called The Palette of Our Earth, as all 33 of these photos are various photos I've taken of our planet. Also, spoiler alert, a lot of the upcoming pieces will be featuring various amounts of photos of the sky and nature that I've taken over the years. Anyway, this piece is about how expressive nature can be. Nature is capable of displaying many different colors, and this piece is a demonstration of such. Each ring of this wheel represents a different concept relating to color. The center possesses complementary colors with both the moon and sun, the middle ring comprises of the 12 color wheel colors, and the outer ring shows 18 photos shaped to various polygons, roughly arranged by value. The background photo was also taken on Earth, albeit of the night sky rather than day. These next pieces are from the midterm in my graphic design class. Here's page 1, the front cover. Pages 2 and 3 discuss the basis of the midterm. This midterm's objective was to show the Gestalt principles of proximity, closure, similarity, anomaly, and movement using simple shapes and text, and arrange it all in a booklet. 15 designs in all were made using a range of color schemes and styles. We began on pages 4 and 5 with proximity. These pages show a bunch of circles with blue, blue-purple, and purple colors arranged vaguely into these arm-looking figures. Pages 6 and 7 depict the cosmos with a black hole, planet, and a whole bunch of stars. Page 8 begins the closure section, with page 9 showing parts of circles being revealed by inverted square portions. Page 10 shows the word closure repeatedly mixed in with the background, and page 11 shows a butterfly preparing to land on a leaf. Arriving in the similarity section, pages 12 and 13 show a 5x5 arrangement of squares and circles. Page 14 shows a non-binary flag with a bunch of dots on it, and page 15 shows these glowing circles. Pages 16 and 17 begin the anomaly section. Here, I've depicted a T-piece from Tetris being placed to clear a T-spin double. I made this back when I actively played Tetris, though I stopped not long after this was made due to what happened after I lost 5 rank matches in a row. Page 18 shows a purple hexagon amongst rows of orange and green hexagons, and page 19 shows red-purple hearts across a scatter of red and purple squares. Pages 20 and 21 begin the final section of continuity, wherein layered squares invert color upon reaching their edges. Page 22 is a fractal heading toward the center of the page, and page 23 has 8 dots progressing toward the top middle of the page. And finally, page 24 is the back cover. And there you have my graphic design midterm. In case you're curious, here's every page arranged by the color scheme that was used. And here's the root color that was used in each section. Returning now to my digital art class, next is the Unexpected Hybrid project, wherein we created a hybrid between multiple images. This is the nature person. The nature person centers around a human figure who's composed entirely of nature. Such nature varies throughout the person. Every part of them is composed of a different kind of leaves. I created this to demonstrate that we are a part of the timelessness of nature. We arose from it, and will all one day return to it when we die, this cycle of nature permeating well beyond either end of our lives. This design was created by cropping out my silhouette, then cloning it repeatedly and masking it with the appropriate scenery. A blending mode called linear light was also used between that silhouette and the skin layer. Later during a revision, I also removed some splotches of sky that were in my hair. The second piece in this project is Lights of Our Lives. Within are 3 colored light bulbs, each of which contain a sunset inside them. Each of these sunsets roughly matches the color of its respective bulb. These lights represent the memories we have not only already made, but also how, as time goes on, we tend to lose those memories, akin to these bulbs burning out. This design was made by firstly separating the bulbs and everything else onto 2 separate layers, followed by reducing the opacity of the bulbs to allow a blend of the sunset's natural color and the bulb it is a part of. The sunset layers were then placed below the wall layer and bulb layer. This design also had an older version with 5 bulbs, so this was eventually remade due to how small the bulbs were and how awkward the lighting was. The last of this set of 3, As Our Time Ticks, depicts 6 photos of me from 2019 to 2024. Each photo is its own year, starting with 2019 at the uppermost right portion, and drawing closer to this year going clockwise. This clock represents how we as people change as time progresses, represented here through its quite literal clock faces. And yes, I used to have much shorter hair. This design was created by first cutting out the inside and outside of the clock, then using triangle masks to place each year's photo into the right place. A slight alteration had to be made to the 2019 portrait, as the edge of the original photo did not reach the edge of the clock face. This was solved via the brush tool. Next in Digital Art 1 came the Text and Texture project. Here, the goal is to make 2 images that blended text and texture into spaces they normally don't occupy. The first of the 2 is note labels. As a child messing with my old keyboard I had at the time, I wrote some note labels down onto the plastic keys so I could remember what note was which. A decade and a half later, I'm far better at playing piano than I was back then, and obviously don't need those labels now, but this design adds those labels to my current keyboard using various letter shapes I found around the house. I wanted to maximize the variety that was present in the note labels, so I got many different styles of letters to place onto the keyboard. The effect of the different key materials came about by first masking the area of each key onto every relevant texture, then setting each texture's blend mode to multiply. These textures were also faded into the keys by gently erasing their ends. Finally, another copy of the original keyboard was placed on top of everything at 25% opacity. The latter of the two is Altered Sky. In this design, elements of a sunrise are replaced with other natural elements of the world. Parts of the sky were replaced with a photo of a lake and a photo of grass near water that roughly matched the colors of the sky, then were blended together by gently erasing the edge of the lake photo. Following this, a copy of the original sky was placed on top of both of these and given the soft light blending mode. Finally, the tree line from an unrelated sunset was placed at the bottom of this photo, as while the original tree line was masked out of the grass photo, I decided the trees need to be more visible. Not only can the sky give us a wide array of colors, the rest of the earth can give us just as many as well. Moving on now to the magazine project in Graphic Design 1. This project's goal, shockingly, was to create a magazine about a topic we found interesting. Me being me, I couldn't decide on the actual topic, so I wrote a bunch about a few collections I possessed. Feel free to pause this video to read the magazine in full. I may also make a future video about my collections too. All three collections have grown to varying degrees since I made this magazine, and I'd love to talk more in detail about what I've collected over the years. Jumping back to Digital Art 1 now, this is the Narrative Portrait project, wherein the objective was to create a narrative within, well, a portrait. 3 works were made for this project, one each centered around a dream, a nightmare, and myself. What do your dreams look like? This is the question I answered in the first of the series, Gallery of Dreams. For this one, I wanted to choose a surreal yet realistic scene of what the raw energy and passion of my dreams look like, here depicted by 19 sunsets. And if you're curious, no, there is not a 20th sunset behind my silhouette. As usual, all 19 sunsets featured in this work I took myself over the last 4 years. I created this project by first masking out my form from a photo of myself, then placing a 4x5 grid of rectangular frames across the image, each 2x2 inches. I then planned out what color sunsets would go where, and began selecting sunset photos to place into these squares, eventually deleting one of them as it was entirely obscured by my body. The One and Lonely emulates this nightmare of mine wherein I'm lost in shadows alone. Being isolated is something that is very difficult for me to deal with, which is why I selected it as my nightmare. The creation process here was relatively simple. I again masked out myself from a photo I took for this project, then placed that on top of a photo of a stormy day. Both layers then had color, contrast, and brightness adjustments applied to them. And finally, during a revision, I used a brush at low opacity to give myself some more light. In contrast to the first two, Soul of an enby is both neutral in mood and also far more tame. Here I split my sweatshirt into halves, both with different designs. The left half, relative to the viewer, is a sunset, which, like the dream design, represents my raw passion for my ideas and beliefs. I identify as non-binary, and I wanted to signify this as part of my soul, so the right side contains the non-binary pride flag. Both halves together represent the expression I have as a human being. This was created by first masking both my form and everything else in separate layers, then separating out my head, sweatshirt zipper, and the left side of my sweatshirt also in separate layers. The left side sweatshirt mask was then copied to this sunset photo. With the layers organized as they were, I was simply able to place the non-binary flag at 2/3 opacity onto the right side of my sweatshirt. Finally, a copy of the original photo was placed at both the top and bottom of the layers, the top layer being set to 2/5 opacity. This project is one of my favorites in terms of both the process and final product, and I'm super proud of how these came out. Moving on to the branding project in graphic design. Here, our goal was to take a product that we thought had suboptimal branding and redesign it to look better. About 2 years ago, I made a parody commercial by the name of Bottled Rubbish. Part of this commercial was the graphic I made representing the can of this highly questionable soda. Of course, this graphic was quite bland and basic as I had stayed up past midnight the day the project was due to finish it on time. So, seeing an opportunity to right a wrong, I made a much more detailed version of the Bottled Rubbish can for this project. There are many more details compared to the old version, including a better logo, product description, barcode, and nutritional hoaxes here on the side. I even went to the trouble of making a 3D render of the can in all its glory, mostly because I was too lazy to print out the label and put it on an actual can. Lastly comes the Value project in Digital Art 1, wherein we were to demonstrate the concept of color value. The penultimate piece I'll be spotlighting here is Scraps of Me. To make it, I used the same photo of myself as I did for Soul of an enby. I made a monochromatic painting of myself with each shade of purple having a value roughly matching the original photo. I then also colored the background a light yellow to provide some contrast. Its name, Scraps of Me, was chosen as a result of the scrappy look of the painting from seam lines between brush usages. To create this design, I started with the aforementioned photo of myself, then made a copy of that layer and both set its opacity to a low amount and applied a black and white filter on it. Then, using the brush and eraser tools, I colored in each location with a purple brush at a varying opacity that would allow the effective shade of purple to roughly match what lied on the original grayscale image. And now my last piece, the skies of painting. With every passing sunrise and sunset, our planet treats us to a unique view that will never be replicated in quite the same way, much like snowflakes. The essence of the sky acting as a constantly evolving painting is what I emulated here in my second design. Within is a sunset in its later stages containing colors from a peaceful blue-violet to a feisty red-orange. This composition began with placing a reference sunset into a layer along with a black rectangle at the bottom, as the tree line was very slightly cut out of frame in a few places. Next, a background of a blue-violet color was filled across the image. Following this, a red-orange brush at 10% opacity was repeatedly stroked across the board and down to the bottom, with the starting place of the stroke lowering slightly with each iteration. Finally, a few smaller lines were drawn randomly across the design at 5% opacity each.
And that's everything I thought was worthy of being shown off. Thanks for watching me ramble about the stuff I made this semester. Hopefully I'll have just as much stuff to talk about next semester.